Good morning. A very sunny and quite beautiful morning here, Craig. Not a cloud in the sky here in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to everybody who's in the chat. I am Gabe at FPL Lens on X. You are watching the FPL Blank Gameweek 26 Net That Haul matchup show with myself and my good soggy friend Craig, @manonpod_Craig. How are you today, my friend?
Yeah, you might see the raindrops on my window in the background. I'm sure at some point in this pod you might hear the wind howling around in the background as well. It's not a pleasant day in London at the moment. So hopefully this will make me feel a bit better because I've got football training tonight as well. So I'm going to go out and get wet playing football training. So we need something to sort of get me prepared for that. So hopefully this can help.
Well, as long as the air blowing around is in the background and not in your head, I think we'll be okay. Here we go. We're gonna kind of get.
I'm sure we'll play some of that air out as well. Yeah, that will happen.
Craig and I were talking off air that we're looking forward to this chat because this will be a football centric chat, and well, I don't know. Craig's fortunes are a little bit different than mine in FPL. At least recently. So he can give some FPL advice, but steer clear from anything FPL related. I have to say, I think, again, I haven't checked my rank, but things don't feel good Craig, on the rank front.
It's awkward right now, right? Because it does feel like quite a big pool of players that are ownable. I think in FPL seasons gone past, you can kind of narrow down the genuine options to quite a small pool of players, particularly like strikers. There might have only been like 4 to choose from realistically, and we'd have 3 of them, 2 maybe if we had a dead spot up front. Midfield, it was quite thin. I think sometimes in defence, definitely like those sort of premium attacking fullbacks were what we had. This year, and certainly at this point of this season, it feels like the pool of players there's more of them. Maybe for some managers there won't be for this next batch of games. For those with a big focus on getting players that play in Game Week 29, that pool of players to target will be a lot less. But for those that are a bit more sort of open-minded about Game Week 29, open to using the free hit and things like that, then the pool we can carry on getting in for the next sort of 2-3 weeks is quite big again. So quite an interesting point of the season, I think, for FPL, and quite a lot of choice depending on how you want to attack the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, no question about that. And speaking of different ways to attack, we have on the slide here, courtesy of an absent Nima who's licking his wounds from yesterday. We have Rasmus Højlund kind of front and center here, and I think that is quite apt. And I think that the combination of forwards is one of the most interesting conversations in FPL these days. I know which 3 I'm going with. We'll kind of get into like which 3 like you might be going with, and maybe some different options, some ways to differentiate as we get into the matchups. But first, as always, we go right into the philosophy. FPL Philosophy for Game Week 26 comes to us from the brilliant lunatic Hunter S. Thompson. He said, or he wrote, actually, a man who procrastinates in his choosing will inevitably have his choice made for him by circumstance. And I mean, I would. So if we're talking, I usually don't like agree or disagree with the quotes. But I think there's a way to kind of like do both with this one. Because I think a person who is making choices in life is always impacted by circumstance. There's circumstances inescapable in life, and you have to account for those circumstances when making decisions. I think what Hunter S. Thompson is getting at here, though, is it's more about being proactive with your decision making, so to kind of like account for circumstance, kind of like see it before it happens, and then you'll kind of be ahead of the game. And I feel like during a time like this in FPL, where there are so many divergent paths, right, and there's so much change and blanks and doubles and the such coming up, that being proactive with our choices and kind of like sticking with that path could be beneficial in these times. What do you think?
I really like this quote, actually. And I think I know we're talking about Gameweek 26 here, but I think this is probably more relevant for me for when I played my wildcard in Gameweek 22. That going into that week, my squad was perfectly fine. There wasn't any urgent issues, certainly not anything that couldn't really have been dealt with for like a -4 or something. But I saw an opportunity where I could set myself up better for this batch of games that followed that. And playing the short term, I felt there was quite a lot of upside, and sort of the longer term would kind of take care of itself. If I hadn't have played that wild card at that point, I think I would have been, as this quote kind of suggests, sort of game week 30, 31 sort of time. Circumstance would have meant I would have had to play the wild card because time was running out, and I would have been backed into the corner to play it because I had to. But I didn't want to procrastinate, and those that have still got a wild card now are probably thinking, or maybe I could have played it already. Maybe I'll play it in game week 27 once we know all the FA Cup results. Maybe I'll play it in game week 30. Maybe I'll play it in 35 because that suits a bench boost better and all these sorts of things. And it is the sort of decision that sort of weighs on your mind. Sort of every week you're making FPL decisions because, well, I might not want to take a hit now because it's possible I'll play my wild card next week and I don't want to take a hit so soon to the wild card. And it dictates your thoughts so much around what might come next that you're maybe not making optimal decisions every week because you're procrastinating on the wild card. So that's not the reason why I played mine, because I didn't want that sort of 10-week dilemma week to week. But I do quite like the fact that a lot of decisions in FPL can sort of drag on for multiple weeks about who you might want to sign, which week to sign them. And ultimately, I think it just messes with your head after a while because you procrastinate so much that you just need to get it done. And I think I've been trying a little bit more this season to do that. If I see something I want to do, I'll just do it, even if it's for a hit, or even if it's not optimal, or even if others may advise me not to do it. I think it clears my own head better to get it done. And I probably enjoyed playing the game a bit more for that.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you have more agency, right? Like you're kind of driving things rather than the circumstance as well. So nice one from Hunter S. Thompson. BW Splitter in the chat here says that he grew up a street away from Hunter S. Thompson. Wish he'd had a chance to party with him. Yeah, don't we all wish we had a chance to party with him? If it's anything like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, we'd probably still be in the middle of that party, huh? But that's a different show. Let's move on to the matchups for this week, Craig. And we're getting started here with your team, Aston Villa versus Nottingham Forest. Aston Villa 1.67 NetxG, Nottingham Forest 1.37. Just some highlights here. Maybe Aston Villa flanks a little bit. That could be propping up the creativity metric there as well. What else here? And then one thing that we have that's new that I began adding to my threads last week, and then we're just starting on the show this week. Nice treat from @Draft Alchemy on X. Definitely go follow him because finally, like I've been looking for this for years, Craig. Like I've been trying to find what we had. Like our zonals those are chances created zonals. Now we have zonal XG data, and he's put together some nice graphics for us. So they will be included in every show, and he's actually in our Discord. He's a hauler in our Discord, so look him up. I think he goes by Hogan, his name in the Discord. So @Draft Alchemy on X, he's showing the zonal, and these are already the matchups are already lined up. So these aren't raw. This isn't raw numbers. It's a matchup numbers, and we're looking at Aston Villa red zones. A deep red is Aston Villa's left and central area. And then Nottingham Forest has a white zone down the middle with blue on the sides, indicating it may not be great down the center for Aston Villa, but it is much better than down the flanks. How do you see this data? And then tell me, I'd love to hear. I know you. Sometimes I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself. So Craig just did the Man on Pod yesterday, and one thing that he was talking about was how will Villa adapt to the loss of Boubacar Kamara? So sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat that one because your insight was great. And you changed who? Was it Martin that was with you?
It was Martin, yeah.
Yeah. You changed his mind. You that really stuck with him.
Yeah, I think for obvious reasons, I think Villa are a team to target right now. This fixture, just by looking at it, would naturally seem a good one. Then Villa obviously play more what would be on paper at least look quite good fixtures for the next few weeks, and they play game week 29. So for those that do want to keep their options open in terms of transfers, I can see why Villa would be a team to target. But also at the moment, we're a team with lots of moving parts and lots of issues. So centre backs, we've got problems. We just had to play Pau Torres as a right centre back rather than the left. Might seem a subtle thing, but I think that makes us weaker. He's obviously now got to get used to defending on a different side, maybe using his weaker foot a little bit more often and things like that. I don't think that helps necessarily. But the big thing is a change of positions for Douglas Luiz predominantly and for John McGinn. So we don't have a natural replacement for Boubacar Kamara as our number 6. And when he was injured for a little bit last season as well, Douglas Luiz often played that role. And I expect him to play that role again. So he's naturally going to play a bit deeper with a little less license to get forward. So those that are looking now for a midfielder to get in will maybe be looking at him thinking he takes some set pieces, takes penalties, and has scored some goals this year from sort of second, third man runs into the box and arriving late for cutbacks and things. But they're less likely to happen now because he's our main defensive midfielder, if you want to use that word. John McGinn will now move probably into the role that Luiz has been playing. Not saying that necessarily makes him a better option for FPL, but a different role for him as well. And for those wanting a Villa defender, probably the other point to raise is Matt Cash's minutes now are probably quite secure for the time being. Concer's injured for a while. Diego Carlos sort of in and out of the team, can't get himself fit, always getting re-injured. So I think for now we've got quite a safe position for Matt Cash at right back because there's no alternative. The one issue I will raise though is that Villa want to attack in like a 3-2-5 shape. And because at the moment we've got a heavily left-footed defence with either Digne or Moreno at left back and then Clement Longley left centre-back, Pau Torres at right centre-back. If Cash is allowed to get forward in the 3-2-5 shape, all of our back three are all left-footed. And I don't think Villa will one, want Longley in the middle of that, and two, want Pau Torres to the right of that. So I think it's quite important. Longley stays left, Torres stays in the middle in terms of ball progression, things like that. So Cash will naturally be held deeper and will play as almost a third centre-back. The role that Enzo Concer's been playing for most of the year. Cash will have to try and adapt to play that, not his natural game. Not as good as a natural defender as what Concer is in that role aerially or positionally and things like that. So you could argue that makes us weaker in transition as well defensively. But because of the injury issues we've got right now and the personnel available, he's going to have to do that. And we did it a bit last year with Ashley Young, you might remember. Villa obviously still carried on playing him at right back for most of the second half of last year. And he had to do this role and sort of transition into it. So I'm not so keen on Villa assets. I think if you've got Darwin Núñez at the moment and you've got enough money to go straight to Ollie Watkins, I can understand why you might do that and keep your options open for the next 4 game weeks. But other than that, I'm not overly keen on Villa. And I think it's one of those moves now that if you're being longer term sighted in terms of game week 29, you'll do it. But you may look back when you get to game week 29 and realise how many points you've lost by getting that Villa player in, all because of one fixture down the line. So probably a score draw would be my prediction for this game if I was going to call it. I think we could be in trouble out wide against the likes of Elanga and stuff in this game.
So since you bring that up, actually BW Splitter, who's in the chat, that mentioned Hunter S living next to Hunter S Thompson. He had a question on Discord. He's saying Elanga is an intriguing shout, maybe attractive as an enabler, given Luton Forest has the best chance to not blank in 29. What do you think about that, Elanga as an option?
I don't hate it. I think if I was going for a Forest player, I think it probably would be him. But again, is he the best option of that price bracket right now? Is he better than a Dingra? Is he better than Garnacho? I think there's still other options around 5 million, and I just don't naturally rate Nottingham Forest as an attacking team as good as Brighton, certainly, and probably not as good as Manchester United right now. So obviously, if you need 2 or 3 of the midfielders at this price point, then it's understandable. But again, in some ways, I think it feels like a player to try and tick a box for game week 29 rather than to actually pick the best player for this run. For this game week, for a small amount more, you can get Hwang or someone like that, right? And I think you'd much rather Hwang play in Sheffield United than Elanga.
That's fair. I mean, if we were playing a weekly game, I think he's more interesting, but we're not. So and in this case, and I have to say, I'm put off like you are with like all Villa assets. We'll move on in just a second here, but I did want to get, because this is something that I'm confused about a little bit. What's your how is your front line functioning in terms of like what is the relationship between Watkins, Bailey, and Diaby?
I think the team more than ever is set up towards creating for Watkins now, so it's a good thing for him. It's moving parts again around him that's the problem, because Villa ideally want Bailey out on the right hand side, but do they get him there by starting him on the right hand side, or do they get him there starting him as a support striker, which is the role that Diaby had for most of the year? And a typical sort of Unai Emery team does have the support striker drifting out to the right, and then the natural right midfielder moving infield and creating overload centrally like that. And then you end up in more of a 4-3-3, or it's probably not even 4-3-3. It's probably, I guess it could be like a 3-2-5 with the 2 wide players being Bailey, the support striker, and the left back being the 2 widest players. Then the 2 midfielders that start as the outside midfield, I'll say wide midfielders. We play like a flat 4-4-2. They become the 2 central sort of 8s, 10s as part of the 3-2-5. But how we really get to that shape is quite different game to game, depending on the personnel on the pitch. We've had Tielemans playing as a support striker and dropping into one of the 8s positions. We've had Bailey playing as a support striker and drifting out to what would be the wide right position. I think it's a good thing in a way for Villa because they're less predictable. And it means that we've got ways to beat most teams, where a lot of teams play. If you look at Arsenal, they tend to play the same system versus everyone. If the opposition can find a way to shut the system down, then they can have some success against Arsenal. With Villa, because there's so many ways to get to the same shape, that if one way is not working, it's easier for us to find a different way or try a different way. Not guaranteed to work, obviously. So it's not an easy question to answer, because within each game we could try sort of 3 different sort of structures that they all end up in 3-2-5, but the players from defensive shape into attacking shape move in different ways to make it happen, depending on who's being asked to play where. So I guess that's one of the issues with Villa in some ways, that you're never quite sure for the 90 minutes where the player you own might be playing, apart from Ollie Watkins.
So last question, and we'll move on to the next fixture. Is Ollie Watkins a top 3 forward in FPL?
I think no, I'm going to say.
I agree.
I think he's probably a close 4th right now, or 5th if you include Højlund, who's obviously on the thumbnail. I think for me at the moment, the fact, obviously, Haaland's Haaland, so he's going to be there for the next couple of weeks. Solanke's got a double game week coming up, so he becomes second priority, I think. Doesn't have to be this week because they've got Man City, but he is a priority. Then the third transfer, I think, who you have as your third striker is trickier. It could be Watkins, could be Ivan Toney, who takes penalties, which Watkins doesn't. Then you've got, say, Højlund, who's arguably more informed than Watkins right now. I know Watkins got 2 last game, but Højlund's been scoring over a longer period. I think the fact that Watkins costs more than the other 2 naturally makes me less inclined to want him, particularly because you might want Salah and players like that soon as well, and Son and players like that are going to take up the budget. Is Watkins good enough to justify the extra spend over a Højlund or a Toney for the third striker spot, which then may leave you short of one of these other midfielders you want? So So I'm quite hesitant to answer, but I'd probably prefer Tony or Højlund at the moment to Watkins for that reason.
Yeah, I tend to agree. All right, moving on. Brighton versus Everton. Interesting, like pretty kind of like low stats here. Brighton 1.66 NetxG, Everton 0.93. Brighton's chance creation maybe from the left and the right. I have to admit I didn't watch the Brighton game, so I don't know. I didn't see what this new development of Adingra kind of hauling is about. I don't know if it was a blip or if that's a trend. But we see as well, like in the XG map as well, it's that right side for Brighton hitting Everton's left that's lighting up red there. Everything else is kind of blue. It's the only thing red there for those in the podcast. So that right side does light up for Adingra, not so much for Matoma anymore. Did you see that Brighton game? Did you see Adingra's haul?
I saw enough of it. I think at the moment, the thing with Brighton is they're not sort of equal in terms of attacking down the flanks. I know it's naturally always been a focus down the left side, but at the moment it's even more of a focus down the left side because they're having to play a centre back at right back. I'm not saying like the likes of Joel Veltman is a really attacking right back, but he's more a natural right back than a Webster or a Van Heck or someone like that. So they are quite lopsided, or they look like they were quite lopsided in the last game with Lamptey and Matoma hogging the left side, holding the width. And because there wasn't as much play down the right, I think just by sort of circumstance, Adingra was maybe attacking the back post a bit more and not expected to hold so much width because there was no point in being wide because the play was the other side to try and cut balls back. And if anything, it was being played back to Gross in sort of a right half space to create, and he was the orchestrator of the game from that position. So I just think Adingra for that, particularly for that one game, just had more license to get in the box, where maybe Brighton normally expect the wide players to hold the width a little bit more. It's the one weakness with Matoma, right? One of the best players in the league, 1v1, but he spends all his time so wide because that's where he's useful to Brighton to take on the fullback and get crosses in. I think he'd be a lot more FPL teams if he showed a little bit more goal threat. And I think he's capable, but Brighton just don't have that role for him. They expect him to maybe completely hold the width, and even the left back makes inverted runs inside him, whether that's a Stupinan or Lamptey. So he just doesn't get in the box enough. And so the current system of Brighton with the centre back playing as more of a right back is maybe allowing the right sided player to get in the area a little bit more. It's far from guaranteed that's the case. And I only saw sort of 30, 40 minutes of the game, but that was what I picked up on that small example.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I wonder if it's in situations like this, right? Brighton going up against Everton. I don't know. Like, I guess recently Everton's right has been they've doubled up with Ashley Young and Godfrey, so that on playing the wing, right? So they're playing kind of like two defenders on that right hand side, and I wonder if that has helped shore up that right side, and that's what opens up the left side here. But as far as Brighton, like if it does feel like a blip for Adingra, and if it's not someone like Matoma, then I have no interest in Brighton, unfortunately, because there is potential there, and even Pascal Gross, I don't think this is a good game for Pascal Gross owners.
It was a game from last year that Everton did a complete smash and grab. I think they won this 5-1. And the strategy from that game from Everton was basically to allow the Brighton right-sided centre-back to carry the ball all the way up the pitch, put no pressure on the ball, just basically shut down all the passing lanes. I think it was Webster in that game that was playing the right centre-back role. And he kept getting on the ball and no one would go to press him. And all the Everton players basically just shut down all of the passing angles. So all we could really do, Webster, was carry the ball forward. And eventually he carried the ball so far forward that he was basically very close to the final third. And then he didn't know what to do with himself. He was in an area of the pitch that was unfamiliar. He was in an area of the pitch that was more congested than what he was used to. And ultimately, the ball would get turned over with him now up the pitch. And then Everton would just bring one sort of direct sort of pass into Dwight McNeil, I think, who was playing on the left side of midfield in that game. And there was just loads of space for him out there because the Brighton right side had all pushed forward and was now out of position. And I think McNeil ended up with about 10 or 15 points. He might have got a goal and 2 assists or something like that in this game. I'm sure Brighton won't walk into the same traps again and may set up differently and remember that game as one where it would be wrong for them. So I'm not saying we'll get a repeat of that sort of game here, but I think Everton showed there that tactically they can be quite astute. And have got Sean Dyche, I think, gets a bit of a reputation for being a manager who's not great tactically. I think that's probably a little bit unfair. I think he will work on a strategy that will nullify Brighton. I probably still think Brighton will win, but I don't think it will be particularly high scoring. I think Everton will do probably quite a good job at keeping this quite compact. And certainly in midfield, they'll have like a physicality and work rate edge, I think, over the likes of Gilmore and Gross, right, where they could maybe use to their advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you. Which is I guess kind of in line with the stats here. Brighton 1.66, Everton 0.93. I think we're both kind of seeing the game the same way. We'll move on to the next one, and only briefly because it's Crystal Palace versus Burnley. Crystal Palace 1.67 NetxG, Burnley 1.27. Anything in the zonals, chance creation for Palace, again from the flanks 4.2 on the zonals, quite positive. But when we kind of like switch over to the XG here, Burnley bright red down the center, so Palace can attack right down the center, and Palace's right also lines up as an area to attack. We're looking at creating from the flanks, maybe right side creating for the central areas. That's probably maybe even still some Elise data, since this is all taken from the past 6. I don't know who's gonna really create for Palace, so I don't know if the stats really tell us so much as much as like I think there will be goals, but I don't think it'll come down to thanks to any kind of system or predictable result of a systematic play. What do you think?
Is it wrong to say this is the game I'm most looking forward to this weekend?
No, like if you're, let's just say you enjoy the circus and carnivals, then you could look forward to this.
Only because obviously Crystal Palace have now got a new manager. So it's obviously the first game of Glasner's reign. And I think tactically in Germany previously, he was quite noteworthy in the way he played. Now it's a complete difference to how we've seen Crystal Palace up until now. He may not repeat what he did in Germany here, but most managers tend to repeat their same formations and styles wherever they go. They have their own philosophies, right? It doesn't matter who they're managing, they're going to try and play like that. So I think in Germany, he was known to play 3 at the back. And in Germany, he was known to kind of sit back in a bit of a sort of a deeper block. But then all of a sudden, sort of from nowhere, there'll just be sort of a spring of pressure. So 4 or 5 players would all just go and swamp the ball and press all at the same time, and then try and catch the opposition out with bodies sort of out of position. Then there'd be overloads in the final third. I guess a bit like the way Liverpool play in some ways, but to a slightly different standard. But you can't buy a Crystal Palace player on this basis because we don't know, obviously, how long it's going to take them to adapt to the system. We don't even know if the manager's going to try and play the same way yet. But you imagine he's going to try and convince the players that the way he's played before is the right way to play. I'll put that in quote marks, the right way to play. So we'll see how long it takes Palace to get up to speed, because we've seen Bournemouth this year, right? They had a new manager come in the summer, different style of play to what they've had before. And you could argue it took 3-4 months for that sort of philosophy to start to show through. And since then, Bournemouth have improved largely. I don't know if this Crystal Palace manager's got 3 or 4 months to let things improve, but can he get his points across and get his tactics across straight away? Who knows? But I'm quite keen to look forward to if Palace set up with a back 3, and quite keen to see how the midfield sort of pressurises the ball. I think it's quite a good game for some of these sort of techniques and ways to play. I think it's quite good they're playing Burnley first as a benchmark to see if it can work. So from a tactical perspective, at least in a football perspective, I think this is the one that I'm the keenest to watch sort of extended highlights of before Gameweek 27.
Yeah, and it will be interesting. Like that's the thing. We don't know anything about Palace or how they're going to set up. If he goes with the back three, I mean, I don't think they have the personnel to play what to do what Glasner wants to do. Like any new manager that comes in, the first thing they're going to do is kind of like solidify the team. Make sure that the foundation is good, that they're not doing stupid things where they're beating themselves up, and you get like at least a fighting environment, right? You instill a fighting environment. So in that sense, in this matchup against Burnley, I could see that midfield, like that central area of midfield, being very crowded, and then there being a lot of like energy and activity there, but the action really coming from the flanks here, from Palace, and like kind of like flanks to then go central. But I think this is going to be a bit of a chaotic game, and just a kind of impossible to predict, and not a game that we're targeting for FPL. So we'll move on to
We'll just see how much of a lunatic he is, right? And Postecoglou at Tottenham decided he was going to persevere with his high line with Eric Dyer and Ben Davies playing centre back, and those two certainly haven't got the characteristics to play that system, but he still did it anyway. So the new manager may decide to play Mitchell, Anderson, and Ward as a back three or something, and Schlupp as a wing back, and all this sort of thing. It could work. I think a lot of games with new managers often end 0-0, to be honest. I don't know if that is another prime candidate to be 0-0, Crystal Palace Burnley. I agree with you that it could be anything. It's difficult to predict. Oh, there you
go. Colm agrees with you. 0-0. But yeah, it's different when you come in prior to the season beginning than mid-season as well, and Ange has time to develop a relationship and a vision and philosophy with the team, whereas Glasner won't have that and needs to find some cohesion initially. But this one is really interesting. Manchester United hosting Fulham. Manchester United, NetxG liking them 2.04, Fulham 1.17, kind of all in the red there for Fulham. Aside from the left zonal matchup, the chance creation matchup on the left for Fulham, we'll get to that in just a second. Manchester United, I mean, green across the board. There's a 53% chance of 2 or more goals for Manchester United. And Fulham will be without Palhinha, who amazingly has 10 yellow cards. Legend. That's probably more Fulham's fault than Palhinha's fault, to be fair. But I want to get to the zonals really quickly here for a second. So Fulham left zonal lines up with a lighter shade of blue on the left-hand side. So it's kind of like the left creating for the left for Fulham, if anything, against Manchester United. And then Manchester United, just that slight red on the flanks there. It's like the flanks creating for the flanks. The left zonal is 4.3, the right zonal is 3.8. I mean, the center is 3.9 as well. So creation could come from anywhere. We're splitting hairs when it's like decimal points there. But the XG, there is quite a difference in the XG. Looking at the most of the XG for Manchester United against Fulham, expected to be created kind of from wide areas. What does that tell you? And are any Manchester United players on the radar for you, Craig?
No, but I do already have Garnacho. If I didn't, I think he would be on my radar. I think anyone that wants to sell Cole Palmer this week to get a full playing 11 out, if they've got to use him as someone to sacrifice to get an 11th player, I think he would be my preference. I think his numbers have been quite good lately. Garnacho should have certainly got more points in the game with Luton. I think he was quite unlucky to only get 5 in that. And he seems to be, by the week, almost more involved than he used to be. With Palhinha out, it's a Bruno Fernandes game, right? It could be. So we'll see if he can step up and get some points for once. I'm not advocating getting him in. But again, if people have got Diego Jota and need somewhere to go sideways from that and have got a little bit of money in the bank, I wouldn't necessarily put people off Bruno Fernandes as a punt for this. And I think a lot of people are struggling for a defender right now because they've got Liverpool defenders, they've got Alfie Doughty, things like that. They might not have 3 defenders for this week. And I'm not massively keen, if I had to make a defender transfer this week, there's none that I really want, if I'm being honest. I think a lot of the better sort of mid-term defenders don't have good games this week. But if you're desperate to get one now, I think Diego Dallo is maybe one, he's probably the top of the list that I would get now. may end up playing left back again, right? Luke Shaw did, 44 minutes, was it, against Luton, had to go off again. So I imagine Dallow's going to get shifted across. Maybe not. Maybe they'll play Lindelof at left back or something again and leave Dallow on the right. I'm not quite sure what side he'll play down. But yeah, I think Man United might make sense for quite a few managers. If you need a defender, I think Dallow's a genuine option. If you want to sell Palmer for a mid, I think Neto should be in the discussion. And if you're a bit more wild, sounds like a you sort of transfer this one, Gabe, a bit more wild, then Bruno Fernandes is probably an option as well.
Yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes is great for this game week, but then you have City next week, so like to invest and go in that direction is probably not advisable. But one thing I want to say, like, so Manchester United, they did something different. They've been doing different things with Rasmus Højlund recently, and I think that's his success has come from this variety of movement. And whereas like initially they've only played him to stretch that back line. Now they're pulling him into midfield. They've even, like, against Luton, I was surprised that he had a lot of activity on the left. So he was pulling left as well. So he's finding he has the freedom to find pockets of space. So against Luton, he was up against a back five, right? And typically, you know, that a 9 will struggle in that situation. I guess he did for much of the game, but he came in with an early goal and had a lot of activity on the left that I think makes him more dangerous. So I think the fact that Rasmus Højlund is being moved around a little bit makes him more dangerous, certainly in this one, and just in general that he can maybe face different types of defenses and still have success. So someone to keep an eye on maybe for after the City game. Although when we get to City's data, you'll see that the central area, they concede everything from the central area. Last week against Chelsea, the XG map showed that like the hottest map in that game was Chelsea attacking City central, and sure enough, that kind of came to pass. So I do think Højlund is someone, if you want to go in on Højlund as a differential, I kind of like that shout now, and I can't believe I'm saying that. If Podna were in the chat, he'd be falling out of his chair. Yeah,
I really like
that
him as a player. For someone so young, I think he's got lots of strings to his bow, in the sense that, as you say, he can run in behind. I think he can drop deep. He can be physical. He can be athletic. I think what I've noticed about him quite a lot is he's got an ability to sort of create separation from the defenders. I think a lot of strikers maybe get a bit glued to the opposing defenders and struggle just to get that yard of space to then do something. And I think he's got a natural knack for sort of just drifting and getting himself that 1 yard. And he has got a good ability, I think, to shoot off both feet as well. So I think he is one of those strikers that over time, sort of next 2 years or so, could be very, very good. And far more reliable, I think. I expect him to be far more reliable for that conversion rate compared to lots of other strikers in the league. So I don't know if I would get him now. Yeah, if you're chasing and want a differential and something, I think he's probably one of the better options for that. But I don't think I can quite prioritise him over Solanke in my case at the moment.
Would you hokey cokey? Would you go Højlund this week, Solanke next week?
Yeah, I think if you've got those transfers to do it, I would prioritise Højlund over Watkins this week if I had a choice between those two.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. So Podna is in the chat. Apparently, he just hurt his head from falling to the ground. I said something positive about Manchester United 2 weeks in a row, Podna. 2 weeks in a row, bud. So we'll quickly move on from that, Craig. Let's get to the aforementioned Manchester City. Bournemouth versus Manchester City. Look at the NetxG, 1.62 for Bournemouth, 1.64 for Manchester City. As far as the zonal chance creation, Manchester City creating from central zones, that's the only one that pops up here, 4.0 from central zones. And if you look at where those chances are going to be against Bournemouth, the XG map likes that right side. So the chances created from the middle for Manchester City's right, but the XG likes Bournemouth's center against Manchester City even more than Manchester City's right against Bournemouth. Also, Bournemouth, the right side lights up for Manchester City, so it could be some manual action, some definitely. I mean, we're looking at it like is this a positive fixture for Solanke?
I wouldn't say positive. I don't think he's clearly not as good as the likes of Hoyland and Watkins, but maybe it's not quite the negative that lots of people might have it down for. I think a lot of people that are thinking about bringing Solanke in are automatically giving themselves 2 points this week and going on. I think there's potential he could get something, almost certainly, because I think he's got some sort of Tony type attributes to him. And Tony's just scored against Man City. He did score against Man City, didn't he? No, he scored against Liverpool. But yeah, I feel like it's a sort of game that someone like Solanke could get one good chance and then score. Just don't trust Man City defence particularly right now. And they're clearly going through that phase where they keep rotating everyone, right? Akanji at left back instead of Ake last game and things like that. Does feel like a Haaland game to me, though. I'm not a particularly big fan of Bournemouth sort of defensive physicality and things like that with Zabanye and Senesi and things. So I feel like if it's a picture that suits Haaland, I feel like this could be quite a good one for him. So I know we're not doing captaincies and stuff yet, but I don't see I think it will certainly be him. If there was any temptation to captain a Wolves player or something this week as a differential, I'm not going to do it. I feel like it's a good Haaland fixture.
Yeah, I think the Holland captaincy is it's a little too obvious. I mean, but it is a little. I think we also have to admit it. It's a little bit of narrative. It's a little bit of there. So Holland is starting to give like Darwin vibes, I think, and it's a little bit of, well, it's Holland. He's getting chances. He has the stats, XG, and all of that. And maybe not so much. But it is Holland and it is Bournemouth, so you have to do it. I guess.
You don't trust Bournemouth, I think, to keep things tight centrally. So I don't think that the attributes of the defenders match up well with, at least with Brentford the weekend. They played Zanka at the back, who's obviously a big physical guy that could maybe have matched up against Haaland with the back three. I don't think Bournemouth are going to line up with a back three to try and shut down Haaland's space. And I don't view either of the two centre-backs as sort of physical with stature to go against what he brings. So will they get enough protection in midfield? I think that's debatable. All the defenders have the attributes to nullify Haaland. I think that's debatable. And I think the reverse of this fixture earlier in the season was ones, I think there were some people even considering a triple captain on Haaland for the single game day. I think, did you do it? Or thinking about it? You did it?
I did it.
How did it go? I can't remember how it went.
He got 1 point. He got subbed at half.
Okay, but there was clear logic on that day that why that game was a good one for Haaland. I know variance, you could call it bad variance or bad luck, whatever, meant it didn't lead to very much. But I don't think too much has changed between the two teams since then to make that reason.
He hurt his ankle, so bad luck. and bad skill. He missed a bunch of chances, then he hurt his ankle. I'm surprised he didn't get a yellow card. So I mean,
do you think much has changed between the two teams since that fixture? Bournemouth have got a little bit better, no doubt, but the way they play is still largely the same, isn't it?
Definitely the same. And Kieran mentions it here. Ola is the type of manager to use the same attacking style regardless of the opposition. Could be a great game. I agree with him that this could be one of the games of the week because tactically both these managers are astute and they both kind of stick to their plans. Quick side note, FPL discomfort. Kieran, it was his birthday yesterday, so he's recovering from that experience. Happy birthday to you, my friend. But I have to say, like, I have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, and maybe I'm bringing like the past emotions into the present or something like that. Like, I want to go against Holland. I want to say, you know what? But that's, I don't know, that's how you dig yourself a grave in FPL, I guess, by letting yourself be influenced by past mistakes.
It depends how strongly you feel about the alternatives, right? We've all got opinions when we do these pods and in general about football. If you feel really strongly about an opinion about someone else, then you got to back yourself, right? Don't procrastinate, Gabe. Follow the opinion.
So don't procrastinate. So Darwin to Solanke is obvious then.
I think if you're playing for 3 weeks, yes. If you're playing for 1 week, you probably go Hoyland in onto Solanke, right? And it might mean an extra transfer in the plan. But how sort of sudden do you want to play? Do you want to play week to week, or do you want to play sort of over 2-3 weeks. Solanke's clearly the one you want over the 3 weeks. But could Højlund get more than 4 points more than Solanke in this week? Yeah. And then even if you take the -4 next week to then do it, you're still up on points over the 2 weeks, aren't you? If Højlund gets 10 and Solanke gets 2, then the 4-point hit, you're still ahead. So depends how strongly you feel about the other matchups and things. I'd be quite surprised if Solanke got more than 6 in this game.
If he was in a bit better form, I think I'd back him more. I think it's for me, it's more just watching him recently. He hasn't been that clever clinical player. It's been a little bit more like space oriented and floaty rather than incisive. So his form would trouble me a little bit. But if he was if he was firing, I would bring him in early and expect maybe a goal for him in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores here. Let's see. All right, let's go on to, here we go. Arsenal hosting Newcastle. Arsenal 2.6 NetxG. Newcastle 1.25 away. Arsenal, I mean, no zonal stands out. All the zonals are firing. Look at the shot-based goal predictor for Arsenal. 40% chance of 3 or more goals, which is just insane. I'll get to like the let me see check the raw data on this really quickly. Okay, I mean, Arsenal has, let's see, at home they're about 21 shots per 90, so decent amount, not the most. I think Liverpool still top it at around 25, but that 40%, and probably also helped by Newcastle. If we look at Newcastle, kind of conceded away here. Newcastle are conceding by far the most shots away, and it's 20 shots away. So expect about 20 shots for Arsenal here in this one, which is why like it's all so green. And if we look at the XG map, especially for those in the podcast, I'll just kind of like oh damn it, I forgot to change that one. That's still the Bournemouth Manchester City, so I'll make a note here. Change map. Whoops. So what do you have for us here? Arsenal versus Newcastle. From a tactical perspective, I want to get to a couple of Arsenal tactical things that we've seen that's new recently. What do you see?
Well, the Odegaard role change is probably the most notable, right? The fact he's deeper in build-up now, I think has been helping Arsenal progress the ball into midfield, which I think has been needed because it's something they've struggled with a little bit since Xhaka's not been in the team, because Havertz is a very different sort of player in that left half space. I think it's left Arsenal one player light in terms of ball progression. So I think there's been a clear change of Odegaard into a slightly deeper role, maybe more similar now to what we've seen over the years from like Bernardo Silva. I compare the new Odegaard role to something we've commonly seen from him. For this particular game, though, it will be really interesting if Jorginho starts, because Arteta's been known to play him in games against teams that press really high as an extra sort of calm ball player in the middle of the pitch who can cope through that sort of frantic phase of play. They obviously haven't got Zinchenko at the moment either, who can invert into midfield and put an extra body in there to help progress the ball through the higher press as well. So my gut feeling is Jorginho will play this. Rice will change roles from a 6 to more of an 8, or a second 6, if you want to call it that. So you'll get the normal Arsenal back 4 with Jorginho next to Rice. Odegaard can play maybe slightly higher. So as much as recently he's played, say, a bit deeper, I think we may see a more of a return now to more of a normal type Odegaard role. And then it's a case of who goes up front for this. And I don't think it'll be a Trossard game, because he's better when Arsenal can sustain pressure in the final third, and he's sort of intricate play around the box is really useful. I don't think Arsenal will find it easy to sustain that pressure. So I think they may go with either Havertz up front to be more of a sort of a direct option. If Arsenal do need to play a bit longer because of the Newcastle press, they may play Havertz up front to deal with that. Or they may just play Nketiah up front, thinking Newcastle could take a lot of chances. Let's just get the best finisher up there, and then maybe he'll score some goals. So they're the two big ones for me. Where I think Jorginho probably comes into midfield, and then who plays up front. And the new Odegaard role, as I'll call it, I think might be put on the back burner for 1 week. Hang on, my cat's just coming on the pod. You might see him. Here he is. He decided to come.
Nice. Front and center. So cool. I'm gonna get distracted here just looking at the cat. Beautiful cat. Arsenal, that I have to say they've been interesting. They went from a 4-2-2-2 to like interchange to inverting Ben White and interchanging Odegaard and Trossard. And I don't know. I don't know if they go back. This will be like a kind of like a state. Like a bit of a statement game where if if Trossard starts up front and Havertz is in the middle again and they're interchanging, then I think they're committing to something that they've found. But if they go maybe with the traditional with a traditional 9, or they try to stretch that back line. But I think the key here, and regardless of what they do, right, whether Odegaard drops deep to help progress the ball, I think one advantage of that when Odegaard drops deep is that it creates more room for Saka. So Saka has more opportunities, can cut inside, and kind of he's less pushed wide. So I think that benefits him. And obviously, like, Newcastle's weakness has been recently has been Dan Burn, and then you can't kind of attack that side. So I think Arsenal will just lean on their strengths and lean on the right side because they kind of can here. So I'd expect. I think this is a Saka game.
He's been the main beneficiary, hasn't he, from the Odegaard changing roles. Saka, as you said, I think he's just got a bit more space and a bit more freedom, maybe because Odegaard's been deeper. There's maybe a bit more room for Saka to come inside a little bit more, and there's not so much congestion of players because Odegaard's not there taking that space. So I don't think it's any coincidence that Saka's returns the last 2-3 game weeks have picked up a little bit with Odegaard dropping deeper. Yeah, intrigued for this one because I think this is a game where Arsenal could change it up and sort of revert back to what they used to be. But as you said, they may not. They may carry on with what they've been doing and has been working for them in the last couple of game weeks.
Yeah, and I mean Saka is a player like I didn't start the season with him because in the Community Shield he was quite wide and he wasn't involved in then kind of those central areas. I realized that was a mistake, so I brought him in. And when I brought him in, he went like 6 weeks when he was like playing wide. So I wildcarded him out, and then he came back inside and he hauled. And this has been my yo-yoing with Saka all season. And it's taken me too long to, like, I guess, understand. He's a player that's just going to get you points, and you should just have him because things can change, and he might be not involved for a little while, but he'll never be a forgotten piece. So I think he's a good target. Yeah, he always finds a way. He's a good target against Newcastle.
Potentially, he's got that Matoma problem I spoke about in the Brighton section earlier, that he tends to be asked to stay wide and sort of stretch the game in that way. And I think Saka does, in large ways, have that same role for Arsenal. But as I say, he just finds a way, whether it's a good cross or whether he has that one moment of interchange with Odegaard that then leads to something. If Matoma could become more like Saka and just find a way, then he'd be a similar option, I think. Because they're similar enough, I think, in the way they play. I think there's subtle differences in their sort of individual attributes, but the roles they're asked to play by the managers, I think, is quite similar. But as I say, Matoma tends to assist the assister or be involved in goals without being directly involved, where Saka is a bit more directly involved. So let's see if Matoma can transition into more of that.
Yeah, right on. We're at about 54 minutes here, so we will move on to the next fixture. There's in about 2 slides, there's another mistake that I just caught. So apologies for that.
To fix it. Next time I have a little rant, Gabe, you can fix it quickly, maybe.
Well, the thing is, I have to fix it in the PowerPoint, then save it as a PDF, then re-upload it to the show. So it's not a quick fix because we're not on OBS, so we're using like a Flintstones technology here. But moving on to a fixture that a lot of people are interested in this game week: Wolves versus Sheffield United. Wolves 1.92 NetxG, Sheffield United 1.12. Sheffield United, like the shot-based goal predictor is actually more robust for Sheffield United than it is for Wolves, which I find interesting. But the XG map is just like bright red for all Sheffield on Sheffield United's side there. So kind of Wolves can attack from anywhere here. It's brighter red or that deeper red on the right and central areas. So expect the XG to maybe be there, but I think when it's this red, it's kind of like whatever works, what your strength is, that's what you're gonna go for.
Yeah, my main transfer this week is going to be a Wolves player. I've got Richarlison, and obviously speaking about how do you want to play what's in front of you or play longer term, I could hold Richarlison for the 29 fixture, but I think my optimal move is to move Richarlison on to one of the Wolves mids. This is a bit interesting that the left side is a slightly different shade of red, because I think that's where Neto will probably play. So in terms of matchups, maybe it's more a Wang game. Directly through the middle rather than Neto down the left. I just think it's so hard right now to pick from those two, because how the game went against Tottenham, I think, was quite specific to the way Tottenham play with the high line and things like that. This game couldn't be any more different. Wolves are going to have to attack so differently in this game to how they chose to attack against Tottenham. The two games aren't really comparable to me. So I don't think we can really actually learn a great deal from what Wolves did against Tottenham in terms of helping us pick someone for this. I know a lot of people's questions will probably be Wang or Neto, which is the preference, and it's the question I keep asking myself every day at the minute. And I probably need to make a decision tonight, because I think both of them are likely to have a price rise. So unless we want to suck up the 0.1, we're going to be putting the transfer through this evening. And I'm still none the wiser. I was hoping you could come and give me some advice here on who you think is the better option between Wang and Neto for this.
And it's for long term, right? Or are you just specifically this fixture?
I'd probably say more for this particular fixture. I think that player will probably move on again in my team within 2 or 3 weeks. This is the money fixture, isn't it? For whatever Wolves mid you pick. They could do something against Newcastle next week, and things like that. And I think it's Fulham the week after. So those games aren't bad for the Wolves mid, but this is the one you've got the high expectancy, isn't it? So I'd probably prioritise whichever one I thought was going to do better in this game.
I mean, to be honest, I think I go Neto. They're more, I say more routes to points, but Huang Hichan has pens, so that could tilt it. But the way I see Neto's involved in both chance creation, and I think he has been involved in the finishing, and I just prefer wide players against Sheffield United to the central players. So for this one, I think despite what the XG map says here, I think I prefer Neto, but it's close. It's really close. It's splitting hairs here, and yeah. I don't know how to, like, if it could be so close that pens makes it Huang, or it could be so close that Neto's involvement in chance creation, and I haven't looked this up, but I'm just going to say maybe potentially bonus points. How do you? I don't know.
Neto's baseline bonus is a lot higher than Wang's. Neto could get bonus points for 1 assist. Wang probably pretty much needs to score to get some, which obviously he could do still. Whether it's a penalty or open play, he could score. Neto, I guess you could
an assist is a goal for
Neto. Pardon?
An assist in effect is a goal for Neto compared to Huang.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, a bit like how we viewed Odegaard, I think, for Arsenal in the past, that an assist instantly brings in like 2 bonus points. So you may as well view it as more than an assist. And I think Neto's got a similar sort of capability for Wolves. So I think I'm edging more towards Neto. I just enjoy him more as a player as well. And as you say, he could take a set piece. Huang is one of those that could do nothing for 89 minutes. And because he's quite a clinical finisher, 1 goal, even against Tottenham, it didn't seem like he did a lot compared to Neto. Neto was involved in everything. Huang was barely involved in anything, but Huang had 1 really good chance. If he had scored that, he would have got more points than Neto, despite having barely done anything and had any involvement in the game. So again, it's what you prefer, right? If you're all about the goals, then get Huang. If you're someone who's a little bit more open to other routes to points and happy with 2 assists and some bonus and things like that, then maybe Neto. Because I think Neto's likely to be, if Wolves score 2 goals, I think Neto's definitely going to be involved in at least one of them. It's possible Huang won't be involved in either.
That's my sense as well. And while we're at it, like obviously we're gonna get to most of the questions there at the end of the show, so I am starring them. But while we're at it here, Comp comes in. Does Sarabia also need a mention? Someone else mentioned Tricky MF. You're not concerned about Sarabia on pens. As far as I know, Sarabia is not on pens. As far as I know, it's Hichan.
Where it's between those two, what I was reading, I think the fact Wang took them before he went away, and then Cunha obviously took them and now is now injured. I think the default position is that Wang's going to take them, but I've seen it mentioned in some places that Sarabia is an option as well. I think my issue with Sarabia is just naturally not as high up the pitch, and I feel like if one of those front three are going to get subbed off, it's more likely to be him. So that there's probably X minutes are probably a bit less for Sarabia, and say that it's not working for them and they want to throw a different attacker on or something with a different sort of dynamic, then I think Sarabia will be the one sacrificed. And I say naturally, I think in all games where I've seen heat maps, his average position has been the furthest back. No set pieces, no penalties, sort of more sort of inferior average position, and the next minute's risk. I think why would you bother with him?
And inferior an inferior player as well, I would say, to Neto and Huang currently, right? He's 31 years old. He's on the wrong side of 30, inferior player, playing deeper. So I wouldn't, Sarabia wouldn't be there. If it's Sarabia you're looking at, I'd probably go elsewhere. And if I were going double up, it would definitely be Neto and Huang.
It might be possible for some people, right? If you do happen to have Cole Palmer and Richarlison or something this week, and you feel like you've got 2 free transfers, I won't put people off getting both of them.
Yeah, I agree. Although I think there's a case to be made for keeping Cole Palmer, because of the value, but I don't disagree with that either. All right, let's. So the next one is where there's a mistake, and I can't even find the map. So oh no, that was it, right? Is that it?
I guess I don't really keep track of how many games we've done. There's obviously less fixtures this week because of the blank, so maybe we have got a bit of a lighter week.
All right. Okay, good. All right. So here's the summary. Best NetxG of the game week is Arsenal 2.6, followed by Manchester United 2.04, then Wolves 1.92. So those are kind of the assets a lot of people are discussing, other than the Man United ones, because Manchester United plays City next week. I'm sure that's otherwise. I think Manchester United would be discussed about more. From the zonal chance creation perspective, I mean, Arsenal just tops it. Arsenal is green all the way across. So get your Arsenal players. Yeah, I did my transfer to Saka. I just ended the pain. So I'm covered there. And unfortunately, we do have get your questions in. We will get to them. Again, Mariner is he's got a lot going on these days, and he wasn't able to give us the captaincy metric, so we don't have that. Check the do check in the Discord. If you're not on Discord, become a member, become a hauler, and get in there, and you'll see Mariner's stuff. Usually, I don't know if it's posted yet, but he's usually able to get to it by the end of the week. He just wasn't able to get to it for this show. We're only about an hour in here, Craig, and we haven't said hello to people in the chat. So I'll just quickly say hi to people in there, and then we'll take your questions. Harbor Boy joined us. Colm is in there. BW Splitta. FPL Soccer Crazy says evening. Who else came in here? So there's some great chat. Jared Whittinger, nice to see you, my friend. He's from the frigid tundra in Canada. Thingamabob Holler is in the chat as well. Peter, FPL team, joined us today. Just joined. This is the dream combo right here. So getting some love from Peter. Let's see. FPL Discomfort, Kieran, happy birthday. Yeah, game week 4, triple captain. Thanks for reminding me. That was a lot of fun. I think that's the one that that was the Fulham game. That was the Fulham game. I had hit my triple captain, and then Palhinha didn't go to Bayern, so I unclicked the triple captain, and Holland got 60 points. And then I TC'd him against Burnley and got 3. So,
You clearly rate Palhinha very highly, Gabe. I don't disagree, by the way. I'd probably have him as the third best sort of number 6 in the league behind Rice and Rodri. But it's interesting that you base the whole triple captaincy decision whether Palhinha was playing. And obviously, you've commented on this pod already that the fact he's not playing makes you more invested in Manchester United probably than if he wasn't. Yeah, I don't disagree. He's probably one of the most underrated players in the league, I think, by a lot of people.
I mean, the fact that he's not at United or a team like that is it's incredible. The fact that Palhinha is still playing at Fulham. No offense to you, Colm, or your club, but Palhinha is top 3-6 in the league for sure. For sure, he's such a good player, and Fulham are. Man, they're whipping boys without Palhinha, and I think United will kind of lay it on them. so we'll see. Let's get to some of these questions, Craig.
I've just got a comment quickly on this screen right now that the NetxG for Crystal Palace this week is higher than Manchester City. So we should be captaining a Crystal Palace player more than Haaland this week. I'm a big fan of that. I just noticed that. I thought I had to bring it up.
Triple captain Mateta.
maybe the new manager will find something good in it.
All right, let's see. Oh, I didn't mention Colin. Colin stopped by, and he stopped by in Colin MC 1888 with a couple X's there. So he wasn't able to tune in, but he stopped by to ask a question. Just tuned in, won't have time to watch before the deadline. So sorry if it's been answered. Best Jota replacement. Let's start there, and then we'll get to the next one about Estupiñán. Who's the best Jota replacement in your opinion?
Depends who you've already got. I would say if it's a 1 week thing, I would go. Well, it depends if you've got 3 Arsenal. If you don't have 3 Arsenal, I think the best Jota replacement is one of the Arsenal midfielders, Saka or Odegaard, probably. If you don't have 3 Arsenal, if you do have 3 Arsenal, then and you're looking more for this week to target the fixtures, I think it's a Wolves guy. If you're more focused on having players for game week 29 as well, then I really don't know which midfielder I would go for. I know we mentioned the Langer and Douglas Luiz. I don't think there's a midfielder I desperately want at the moment who plays this weekend 29. I couldn't name one, I don't think. Do you think of one? I wouldn't want a West Ham midfielder.
No, I mean,
midfielder.
Again, I think we approach it without falling into that trap of 29, and you just play the week in front of you. Obviously, you have to think a little bit further ahead. I think if it's just for this game week, then I would go Bruno Fernandes. If it is, well, top is Saka. If you don't have Saka, you get Saka. He's top of the list. But then that second spot, I think for this game week, it's Bruno Fernandes. But if you're looking for like maybe the next few, then it would be. Then I'd probably go to Neto or something like that. Yeah, I'd probably go with them too, and I'd go for a Wolves mid over the second Arsenal mid over Odegaard. I would probably go for the Wolves guy.
I think that factors into the second part of this question, because if you have got an Arsenal spot free at the moment, then defence in general is so hard right now that there's no defenders really getting consistent points apart from the Arsenal guys. So if you've got space this week to get an Arsenal player and you want to sell a Estupiñán and Jota, I'd make my priority to get an Arsenal defender and I think there's more options to replace Jota with, whether it's a Man United mid, whether it's a Wolves mid. I'm struggling to find alternatives to an Estupiñán apart from an Arsenal defender for this week. You could go to a Wolves or something, Man United, but I'm not massively in love with either of those.
I don't like the entry point for Arsenal defenders this week. I prefer the entry point for the attackers this week. So I would go, but again, if most people do have Saka, so assuming you already have Saka, then I think the defender transfer is perfectly fine. Is Estupiñán a sell? We didn't talk about Estupiñán. We kind of like missed him in the Brighton chat. Remember that there was a time this season where he was benched and then he was brought back and he was a starter again. Do you think that happens, or have we seen kind of like the last of the days of Estupiñán with upside?
I'm more worried now. I thought when he missed the game 2 games ago, I can't think who it was against now, when Lamptey played left back. I was like, okay, this is just a rest game for him and he'll be back. Yeah, I can't remember.
Anyway,
but I thought it'd be one game and it'll be rest rotation and he'll be back in. So I firmly expected him to play the Sheffield United game. The fact that he then also missed that. And then what I think was also significant in the Sheffield United game is that at half-time, they replaced both the fullbacks. And they still didn't bring a Stupinan on. I think they changed positions a little bit. Moda came on in midfield. I think Gross went to a slightly alternate position. I know De Zerbi is quite flexible tactically like that, but you've got 2 starting fullbacks and then 2 substitute fullbacks, and he's still sat on the bench. It does make you wonder now if there's sort of a bigger reason in the background going on. Have they fallen out? Are they not getting on? Maybe he wouldn't be in the squad at all if they're completely fallen out. So I'm not quite sure that they had the land between this relationship, but the fact he's now not started 2 in a row and then didn't really get on until the last 10 minutes of that Sheffield United game, I think is concerning. The problem is, again, for this week, if you need to sell him for a -4, do you trust any defender that you're going to bring in to get 4 points? I'm not sure the defenders that I'd be massively in favour of owning. The Man United defender, they guaranteed 4 points. No, they could easily concede and get 2. You could get a Wolves defender. I'd be quite confident they'd keep a clean sheet, but do you really want them beyond this week? Probably not. And I think that's the hard part. The defenders you might want longer term, the Bournemouth, because they've got a double. Maybe Trippier's going to come back onto the radar soon. I think his fixtures get a little bit better, but you're not going to want to take a -4 for him at the Emirates this week. I'd probably just ride it out with a sleeper and play him. Hope that he starts. If he doesn't, you might get 1 point off the bench. But I don't really see you're going to get in for a hit that's going to justify 4 points. Looking at this week's fixtures, it is probably my take.
Yeah, I think you have to hang in there a little bit more. But it was the Palace game. It was that Palace game where he sat. And I'm worried. I'm an owner and I'm concerned. And I also just kind of don't get it. I mean, Lamptey is a right back, right? Traditionally, like historically, you have your right back, you have your left back. Like why? I don't know. I'm not sure what he's doing. And maybe the fact that Estupiñán isn't a fixture there, maybe that's affecting Matoma. So, and I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked into that enough yet, but unfortunately, Estupiñán is a sell. But with players blanking this game week, he's not the obvious sell. You sell a blanker.
Yeah, he's probably a sell realistically for a Bournemouth next week, right? They've got Burnley away and then a double. If you're looking at it, you'd probably hang it out for 1 more week and do something more like that rather than force something now, I think.
Actually, that just before we get to some of the other questions here, speaking of Bournemouth defenders, who's the Bournemouth defender to get?
Not something I've looked at yet. I think it's a game week 28 problem for me. I will get one, I think, in game week 28. My gut feeling is Senesi's got a little bit more goal threat than Sabanier. I don't think any of the fullbacks are showing enough right now in terms of attacking capabilities. I know on previous pods we've done, you've highlighted Kirkes and even Max Aarons as being quite good attacking fullbacks, but their X minutes aren't trustworthy right now, are they? And things like that. So I think you have to go with the safe minutes of one of the 2 centre backs. Yeah, I don't know which one's got the bigger goal threat, but whichever one that is, I'd probably get them. It's a shame. I would like a fullback if we could trust one to play enough.
A fullback in that Iraola system could do really well, but I agree that he's not settled yet. Nobody has kind of like stood out there yet. So unfortunately, one of the center backs, Senesi or Zabarni, is probably the better pick there. Kieran asks, 8 Nuri in for VVD seems smart. What do you think?
Yeah, he'd be in a free hit team this week, wouldn't he? In terms of upside defenders for this week, he's got a high average position and he's playing the worst team in the league. So talking about 1 week punch for a defender, I think if I was on a free hit, I'd have him. It's just, again, if you're getting him in for a hit, I think free transfer is different. But I think you have to assess how many times you're likely to play him in the next 3-4 weeks. I don't think it's worth forcing a defender in if you're going to bench him for the next 3-4 weeks. So I don't hate it as a move. I say probably he'd be near the top of the shortlist, wouldn't he, for a defender transfer? I've got Van Dijk and I'm not selling him for 8 Nori this week, if that means anything.
Well, would you prefer Pau Torres to 8 Nori?
No, because I don't trust Villa's clean sheets. We've lost their holding midfielder, and the defence. Everyone's playing in different positions. He's another. How many examples have there been in recent weeks with Salah, with Trent, with De Bruyne that they come back from an injury and maybe they rush back too many minutes too soon, maybe a slight re-injury. He's only just come back. That was his first game, Pau Torres, for about 2 months last week. So he could be another one that suffers in the same way. I think it's a risk that he's definitely fit. And I've got no faith in the Villa clean sheets given the shuffling of the team at the moment. So he's not even one I don't think you can guarantee to play game week 29 as things stand. So you can't even get him in with that reasoning. So I'd probably get Nori over Torres, I think, of the two.
Now, to stay on the kind of defender theme here, we have a K7 coming in. Question: would you guys consider Dawson versus Sheffield United?
Is this what we've come to? Is it throwing Dawson in?
Probably prefer Aid-Nouri there, buddy.
Well, in terms of the question said, would we consider? Yeah, if I want to be sort of semantic about it, yeah, I would consider him. But again, how many times are you going to play him? If you can justify you're going to play him sort of 3-4 times in the next 6 weeks, then go ahead. But I don't think you're going to play him at Newcastle next week. Then I don't know what your team will be for game week 28, but there'll be doubles and things with Luton and Bournemouth. You need to have a look at your own squad and look at how often you're going to play him. But if you can play him 2 of the next 3 weeks, then yeah, maybe yeah. He's got the most goal threat, hasn't he, of their centre backs at least. You wouldn't be surprised if he's got a header from a corner or something.
Right. So full disclosure, if it looks like I'm doing like some weird things, there's this fly that's driving me insane here, and I keep trying to like swat it away, but also like act cool. It's like, and then I'll go like that. You've seen it. It's landed on the mic.
I think this fly is going to become the same celebrity as my cat on this pod. I think I don't know what the bigger animal involvement is, but my cat's gone now. But your fly's still hanging around.
Next week, the show is going to be hosted by the cat and the fly. So really quickly, I feel badly for this one. I didn't say hi to Claire when I was saying hi to everybody. Claire is in the chat and she's contributed, and she comes in. She said she start Leno and goalkeeper versus United or Neto goalkeeper versus City this week. Which form of torture should she go for here? I know what I think.
I'd probably start Leno, I think. Only because I think there's been games already this year where you maybe don't have the highest expectation of him. Probably a while ago now, but there's numerous games, at least early on in the season, where he got unexpected clean sheets, save points, and bonus points to go with it. And I think I've generally got a little bit more faith that Man City will find a way to score than what Man United could have one of those game weeks where people can't finish, right? I don't think there's much in it, if I'm being genuinely honest. I don't expect either team to keep a clean sheet. Both keepers will probably get save points. I wouldn't like to predict who I expect to concede more. You may argue, Gabe, that you expect Man United to outscore Man City this week, and I couldn't disagree with you. I think City could win comfortable 2-0. Man United might score 3 or 4 in their game. I think it's a coin flip, really, and about as close as the Wayne Neto decision. This one.
It is. It's a tight one, and it's an interesting dilemma to have. Not a good dilemma to have, but an interesting one. And I would say I would prefer, and I'm willing to like craft my response in the narrative that makes my opinion sound like the right way to go. So fully biased response here. I prefer the goalkeeper at home with all his players fit to the goalkeeper away with the only Premier League player on the team not fit. So don't do Leno without Palhinha. Do Neto at home. That would be my preference, but I agree with you, Craig. Leno is a better shot stopper than Neto is, so you could see him maybe getting save points. And I mean, I want to say Højlund is not as good a finisher as Haaland is, but given current form, Højlund is in better form than Haaland is. So if you're factoring form, then that would also go to Neto.
Man United have got more dynamic players as well, right? Man City have all pretty keep the ball, but they don't really have many penetrative players. It doesn't feel like maybe Alvarez and Haaland aside. Foden's maybe playing a bit more like that. Where United, you could see Garnacho, Bruno, Højlund, Rashford, should he play? All these players are sort of focused on goals, where Man City's maybe their focus sometimes is on ball retention and other things. So yeah, I would play Leno personally, but I wouldn't put. I don't feel strongly enough about it to say it's a clear decision.
Well, interesting wrinkle as my dog is stretching in the back. I don't know if you can see him back there. It's gonna be an all animal show next time around.
He looks very bored, Gabe. I don't know if he's not a fan of FPL chat, no.
That's successful dog parenting if your pet looks bored all the time. Claire says, LOL, I'm starting Leno because I've got no United, but also have Foden and Holland. And that's a fair point. It's a good way to look at it. Obviously, you don't start the goalkeeper against your own attackers. Keep dropping those questions in with a short game week. We do have a little bit of extra time to kind of go into them a little bit more deeply. BW Splitter, I was saving yours. I'm glad because Nima's in the chat. And Nima, I hope you're still here. Busy day at the office, but he's able to join us. Now that Nima's here, I'm gonna throw this one on there just to make Nima's day at the office a little bit worse. BW Splitter asks, stupid fly, dying to hear y'all's thoughts on Arsenal's poor form versus Porto. Was Porto just that good, or is it a concern? Set pieces suddenly felt very different. What I'll say about Porto is I think Porto they haven't conceded at home in like 6 matches or something like that. But so I thought Porto just played Arsenal really, really well. Physical but not dirty. Arsenal had more fouls, way more fouls than Porto did. Porto had more shots in the box, more shots on target, more big chances, higher XG. And Arsenal just won the possession game. But I think this is a lesson that Arsenal is learning is it's not enough to win the possession game. I think there have been many at times this season where their possession, we've called them constipated on this show, right? We've said that their possession gets stagnant and they're constipated. I think when Odegaard crowds Saka, or when they crowd each other, it's not like it's one's fault or the other, but that design and forcing everything into a packed zone makes them constipated at times. And then when they face like a team like Porto, that's just like tactically astute, they have an identity, and they their Conceição is quoted as saying, it's like Arsenal came to possess the game, we came to win the game. That these teams, they know how to win, and I think Arsenal are just learning some lessons, but I don't think it's a concern. What do you think?
It very much reminded me of a Manchester City Champions League game from about 3 or 4 years ago, and I think at that point, Pep sort of realised the sort of players he was lacking in his team. Because Man City used to tactically dominate quite a lot of Champions League games, but how many times they get knocked out in like a quarter-final or something in sort of a one-off game where you didn't expect them to lose, but just moments and circumstance went against them in one-off games. And you could argue that they lack that clinical finisher at key moments, hence they went out and bought Haaland. And they've obviously won a Champions League since they've done that. I think the Arsenal performance yesterday was a lot like that. They had enough of the game. They probably, you would argue from a territory and sort of perspective, they did enough to win the game, but they lacked something in the final third. And I think it's still fair to say Arsenal don't really have that out-and-out striker. I know they've got Jesus and Nketiah, but they haven't got that real sort of number 9 type striker. So maybe they're just on this progressive path that Man City were on for quite a long time under Pep, and it took them obviously a certain amount of years to get all the pieces of that puzzle together. And in one-off games, you can get found out by teams with good quality, right? If you tactically set up well as an opposition and you have 1 or 2 moments in a game and you have the quality to take advantage of transitions and moments, you can beat anyone. And I think that's where Arsenal fell yesterday. They didn't have maybe enough elite players, certainly in attack. And Porto took their chances. Well, they took one of their chances. The guy that hit the inside of the post and then put the rebound wide on the volley from about 2 yards out. That was some miss, right? Like, yeah. I think I'd have backed myself to score either of them 2 chances. Hit the inside of the post from 4 yards, then put the rebound wide from 2 yards. Yeah, I don't quite know how he did that, but
Nima's chiming in here. Nima says, needed Jesus, Zinchenko, Partey at this level. Naive from the youngsters, and none of the UCL players were fit to take apart. That's actually that's a good point. Nima also says Porto have serious European pedigree, and there are teams like this, right? That we talk about pedigree and how it is kind of narrative, but you get teams that don't have to be good to be successful. And I'm thinking of some of those actually Unai Emery Sevilla teams that destroyed that just owned the Europa League for so long. So I think he does make a good point. Like to go, like you can't take teams for granted, and there are different ways to play the game. Not in line with what Arteta said about Porto and Conceição that they came out to not play, especially after with those stats. If a team doesn't come out to play, then you don't need to foul them 22 times, right? We'll move on to the next one. Sokan 1 says wildcard teams to target. If you were on wildcard this game week, I mean, obviously, who are you targeting other than City, of course?
Right. So how would I set a wild card up? I would get my 3 Bournemouth in. I would consider, well, at least 2 Bournemouth, and I'd consider benching both of them, even if I had Solanke. I still think I would probably get him now and bench him, and maybe the goalkeeper or something and bench him. I'd probably have at least 2 Man United players. I think I would have Garnacho as a cheap mid, and I would probably punt Højlund up front for now. I think I would go Haaland, Højlund, and Solanke as my 3 strikers on a wild card for now. And I think I would consider playing sort of 3-5-2 this week and having Solanke's first sub, but having him in place for 27-28. Yeah, in midfield, you'd have Foden, you'd have at least 1 Arsenal mid. You'd have a Wolves mid, you'd have Garnacho, and then another. And in defence, you'd probably have 2 Arsenal defenders. I think you would have, I don't know else I'd have apart from that. Defence is really hard at the moment to iron out who to have. But 2 Arsenal defenders would be a lock. And that would probably be the gist of it. I think I've probably named about 11, 12 players there. And then what budget you've got left, you can start working out what else you want to do. I don't know how well that team would set up for game week 29, by the way. But again, I won't be focusing on that.
Yeah. Nothing to add. I think that's a good rundown. We'll keep them going here. Nandish says, sorry if I missed the chat about this, but if we want a player in 26 and 29, surely Bowen will come good. He's one of the highest scoring players in the game. And I bring this up because, again, much like who was it that we forgot to? Much like Estupiñán, we didn't talk about Bowen at all. And I think maybe by not talking about him, that's saying a lot about him, about what we think of him anyway, or what we think of his team. Bowen is not an option for me just because, I mean, West Ham are getting healthy. Like I need to see West Ham have a functional kind of like progression of play and kind of functional ideas in midfield and ways to get the ball forward before I invest in them. I do think the return of Antonio is obviously really good for him, where he can play on his favorite right. Maybe Kudus comes in at the 10. I'm not sure, but I'm not investing in West Ham. How about you?
This was the game we missed, right? You thought there was another game. We didn't do West Ham Brentford.
That's the game we missed.
You said there was another game, and there was a mistake on the slide, and it kind of vanished, right?
But it's weird because I have it here. I have it here in the PowerPoint, so I don't know why that slide didn't get saved. But anyway,
yeah. So we talked about it briefly now, but I've just seen. Well, I've not been West Ham's biggest fans all season for their pessimistic approach and not wanting the ball. I think I've seen today Paqueta's not expected to be back for this game, and I couldn't be anywhere close to investing in a West Ham player until he comes back because I feel like he's their sort of main creative player. If you just look at each game week between now and game week 29, there's so many options that I think have got more upside than Bowen. So if you look at it now, fair enough, he plays game week 29, but you could easily get less than 10 points between 26 and 28 from him. And then in 29, he's got Aston Villa, and who knows, you'll get 5 points in that game. So you're going to end up with 15 points over the 4 game weeks from him, something like that, as a reasonable guess. You can get more than 15 points in the next 2 weeks from someone else. and you're still getting more points over the run of fixtures. I just got no faith that Bowen's going to score 2 or 3 goals in the next 4 game weeks. If Mendish or someone else really thinks there's going to be a shock return to form, then obviously go ahead and get him, because you might actually end up being quite a nice differential for this run. But he's the typical sort of player right now for those that are maybe too focused on game week 29, that they'll think, I'll get him. He's got some pedigree. He's got some upside. He's playing in quite an advanced role, and he ticks 2 boxes that he plays 26 and 29. But I think if you look at each game week individually, I don't think you want to play him in any of them. We've obviously just gone through what our wild card might look like in 26. Bowen was nowhere near it. I'm sure if we did the same thing in 27 and 28, he'd be nowhere near it. So there must be other midfield moves you can make that at least give the promise of more points than what getting him does.
And to say a little bit more about this fixture since we missed it, I love this fixture for Reguilon. The West Ham's right side has been pretty vulnerable all season, so it's a great fixture for him, and it's just a fantastic fixture for Tony. So Tony would definitely be in my front 3 if I was wildcarding this week. Just to go back to that really quickly, it'd be Haaland, Tony, and Højlund, and then I would go Højlund to Solanke next week. That's how I would line them up. But yeah, I'm like you. I'm at the same mind. Like I don't want players from these types of teams just because they play in 26 and 29. I'd rather fashion my strategy in a different way.
A little bit of a plug to obviously the Man On pod that I do. Before the season started, the 3 of us that do that pod together made a big sort of point about sort of rules for ourselves to follow over the season. And one of my rules in that section was to avoid players from average to bad teams, even if they've got sort of a talismanic sort of nature to them. Very rarely do those sorts of players deliver. Maybe James Maddison at Leicester maybe did quite well, but players like Bowen, West Ham generally quite a poor team, don't have loads of chances, don't have lots of possession. I know he has got hauls in the past and has got steady sort of returns to points. But he's exactly the sort of player that I sort of vowed to myself I wouldn't own, because he didn't tick that sort of rule that I'd set myself. I think at the moment there's enough good attacking teams that you can pick from that you don't need to resort to paying sort of 8 million for someone like him.
Right. And that's what I just responded in the chat. If you are going to bench him for certain weeks, then get a more affordable player who's easier to bench. K7 comes in and asks, is Martinelli a keep? He doesn't have Saka.
Feels harsh to make that sideways switch, doesn't it? It feels like one of those that you've got other priorities right now over that. Doesn't feel like a -4 worthy choice, does it?
In a blank game week, you got to focus on the blanks.
Yeah, I'd keep Martin. I think he's been a little bit unlucky, to be fair. I won't be selling him.
And if recent developments hold up, then Martinelli will be involved. That left will light up a little bit more with that Trossard Havertz exchange between the 9 and that kind of left-sided 8. I already did this one from Claire. Jared, unlike most, I have Solanke and Højlund already. So this is what we were just talking about. He's sitting there with Darwin, already has Højlund and Solanke. Højlund, you say Højlund. Wait, Højlund or Tony? Højlund or Tony?
So anyone that wants to keep their options open, obviously before the game week 27 deadline, will know all the fixtures for game week 29. So if you still have the mindset at the moment that you may want to play through game week 29 without using the free hit, then Watkins is probably the best choice you can make this week in terms of keeping your flexibility and your options open. Because he's got good fixtures for the next 3 or 4 weeks. He plays 29 if you need him. So you're kind of setting yourself up. But so I just think that his cost over the other 2, for example, next week, I might be in a position to do Kevin De Bruyne to Mo Salah next week. If I got Watkins in this week from Darwin, I can't afford to do that. If I got Solanke in or Tony in, I think I could afford to do that. So I think these are the things you've got to look at. I think Watkins I can see the reasons for getting him, and I don't exactly disagree with them. But in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a lot of players at a cost that you might want. Salah, Son, people like this. And if you're now eating up your budget by getting Watkins, who's a fine person to own, but there's other strikers cheaper than him that probably offer just as much. You may price yourself out on something else you want to do. So again, it depends what your priorities are. I think each to their own for this one.
Yeah, and I mean when it comes down to like, and I like Højlund and Tony more than Watkins, Jared, and I mean if it's between Højlund and Tony, I go Tony. Pens, they both play in 26 and 29, right? So Pens,
Højlund doesn't at the moment.
Oh, right. So Pens, more fixtures. So I just think Tony's just too good to pass up, in my opinion. So I go Tony. I move Darwin to Tony there. Peter, FPL team, and if you haven't checked his stuff out, go to fpl.team. Super good resources, really helpful. He asks, who would be your top picks on a free hit this week that others probably won't go to that aren't free hitting?
Question for you here, Gabe, because you was contemplating this, right? You thought about it. I don't know how serious you were.
I was super serious. I wish I was still serious. I'm not anymore. So here's my free hit team. I have Za and Jose Za and Dubravka in goal. Dubravka, whatever. It could be anybody. Gabriel, Diogo Dalot, 8 Nuri is my back three. It's a 3-4-3. I have Staka. Well, it's tough. My midfield five of Bruno Fernandes, De Bruyne, Neto, Foden, and Saka, and then a front three of Tony, Højlund, and Holland. In this scenario, I probably bench Neto. Reluctantly, he'd be first bench.
I wouldn't have De Bruyne on a free hit. You're not sure he's definitely not injured, right?
Oh, is it? Well, yeah, I made this a couple of days ago, so I didn't have some information. But so just Bruno Fernandes would definitely be the player that I target on free hit, and Højlund as well. Basically, Fulham.
Yeah, I think Man United attacks a differential. Man United and Wolves, right? They're the two teams this week that people don't have that could do well.
And Tony against West Ham.
Yeah, is he? I don't know what his ownership. I've got him already, but I don't know what his ownership is. He a differential? I don't know what his ownership is, but yeah,
9.3%.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah. Tricky MF. If you had a full 11 to field plus S2 sub, would you roll the free transfer this week to wait for blanks to be revealed? Wolves and United are tempting. Hwang or Garnacho.
Depends on the 11 are, right?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, that's fair too. But I mean, in theory, well, hopefully you don't have like Newcastle.
Yeah, if he's playing Anthony Gordon or something, is one of the 11. I'd move Anthony Gordon onto Wolves. Or say if he's playing Solanke, I think there's an argument you could bench him this week and get someone better. I know we just spoke about you could do something, but it's not a bad week to roll. I think a lot of people will be playing with 10 this week, or at least taking a -4. So
yeah,
you'll be in a much stronger position next week with 2 free transfers, and you may even have more players this week. But it does depend who the 11 are. If you're playing like Everton players or something away to Brighton and Newcastle players, then you may be sacrificing something.
Yeah, we're going to get information after game week 26, before game week 27. So it will be an advantage to have that extra transfer there, and not taking a hit this week. I think is also going to be like between a +2 or +3 to your kind of game week rank there. So yeah, roll if you can. I think this is the last question. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see any new ones that have come in. Our last one comes in from Panenka Productions. Great name. 2 free transfers. Jota and Palmer out for whom? Currently leaning towards Saka and Hwang. We would probably say Saka and Neto, but Saka and Hwang.
Yeah, you can't argue with those two, right?
Yeah. And then since there's no captaincy, hold on, let's see. Yeah, since there's no captaincy metric this week, let's just have a little captaincy conversation. You already said Holland is kind of like too obvious. You're going there, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think, but more not from an EO perspective or a fear. I think it's more because of the matchup. Because I don't think Bournemouth have the sort of minerals, for want of a better word, to cope with him. I think the defenders and the holding mids aren't of the right skill set to maybe handle him the best. If it was, if he was playing somebody else, I think there are alternative captains with upside. You like the Tony Fixture. So if someone's being ultra differential, they can obviously just operation target Sheffield United and get the captain the Wolves player. One of those Wolves players is probably going to get a good haul this week. Variance if you're on the right one, but someone's probably going to get a double figure total from one of those Wolves guys, I think, this week.
It's such a toss up between the two, though, that I wouldn't want to go there with that coin toss. I think Saka is a great captaincy option. At home against Newcastle, one of the worst defenses in the league away in recent weeks. And Tony. So I currently have it on Holland, but I'm not set by any means. And also, if I didn't know De Bruyne was likely out this week, if De Bruyne is likely out, I might do that free hit.
I don't know if he's likely out, but he obviously didn't warm up at any point of the game against Brentford. And the quote I saw after was that he had some repeat pain in his hamstring, not enough to be long-term worrying, but they didn't play him as a precaution. Is that likely to still be in existence after a week? Is he going to warm up in the game against Bournemouth and feel a little pain again, and they'll keep him out again as a precaution? I've got a decision this week that I've got 11, but one of them's him. So do I make the transfer to get basically a 12th player in as some protection in case De Bruyne doesn't play? Or do I just play with 10? I think a lot of people will have 11 that includes De Bruyne this week. So there'll be a lot of people in this boat that if he doesn't show up or is unfit, then they'll be playing with 10. But if he does get injured, I could use a -4, and that suddenly becomes almost a -2, right? If the player's becoming my 11th man that I bring in. So I'm not sure where I stand with him this week. I certainly wouldn't be getting him on a free hit because I think there's enough risk. At least, even if he plays, he's not going to play the full game, you wouldn't think. But you know what Pep's like for being quite vague with information. That's all I saw at the moment was that it was a pain in his hamstring and it was a precaution. So that could last for a month, couldn't it?
Peter's trying to tempt me, little devil Peter on my shoulder, telling me to do the free hit. Gabe, join me. Honestly, Peter, I was planning on this free hit for a long time, but it was going to be like bench boost free hit, and then the bench boost didn't work out. And now I'm on the fence. Like I think my team is in a position where I could go either way. I have 4 blanking players plus potentially De Bruyne, which would make it right 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I have 5 blanking players plus potentially De Bruyne. So I mean, I'm just at I'm taking a -8 to field 11 kind of territory. I could do field 10 with a -4, but that's a pretty big setback.
I like it in the fact you don't often get to really free hit in a week where you get to really attack teams with low ownership. So we've obviously just commented on Man United and Wolves. Most people might have 2. Like I'll probably have Garnacho and Neto or something. So I'll have 1 attacker from each, but that'll be it. If you're in a position where you could go into this week with Bruno, Garnacho, Højlund, Neto, Wang, and Star.
Foden.
Yeah,
like so and all the glue picks.
Yeah, you've got a chance there to attack 2 teams. I don't want to put numbers in your mouth, but you may think Wolves could score 4 or 5 this week. You might think Man United could score 4 or 5 this week. It's not often you're going to be able to target 2 teams that you expect to maybe score 7, 8 goals, and there's minimal interest from anyone else on those teams. So we always think of free hits as upside chasing. You maybe don't get too many bigger upsides than this. If you feel that strongly about those 2 teams.
That was my thinking that these are it's the differential kind of element that upside to hit lightning in the bottle for two teams that you don't really want to invest a lot in. You don't want to go too hard into these teams, even if you get one or two, and so nobody will. So I think there's an opportunity there, rather than clawing my way with like hits and not enough players. So Peter, I think it's back on the menu a little bit for me.
Yeah, do you view these as bigger upside games than Brentford against? So most people have got a free hit 29, I think. Are these games this week a bigger upside for you than Brentford playing away to Burnley in 29, Tottenham playing away to Fulham in 29, Aston Villa playing West Ham in 29? If you like these games more, the upside's bigger in these games, isn't it? Compared to what most people are going to be targeting in 29. Maybe you won't be able to get to.
But I have those, but I want those players long term. I want Brentford, I want Spurs. So like I'll bring those players in for 29. Maybe a Villa player, maybe not. I don't know. I want to see what Villa are without Kamara. Maybe Villa's not good to invest in, and we'll see then. But I feel like I'm gonna have I have Reguilon already. I have Tony already, so I'm more set up for 29. I like those players more long term.
Yeah, maybe it works for you then. But everyone says play it your way, right? Maybe this is set up for you to play it this week. You've got a big.
Don't
you're
play
known for going a bit off piece, Gabe. You're known for going a bit off piece than doing things your own way. So you shouldn't change the habit of a lifetime, right? You might as well do it again this week.
I fully back the play it your way. I fully back play it your way. Yeah, I don't think you should play it my way though. I don't think I should play it my way. So that's that. All right, cool. Well, let's see. Yep, he says these are all the reasons why I wanted to free hit this week over 29, where the teams are a bit crap. Agreed with that, Peter. Okay, I think that does it for us. Let's say thank you to the haulers, Super Haulers, FPL Robbie, Greenback Golf, Harbor Boy, David Harrison, FPL Discomfort, True Fendella, that's Victor over there, and Colm Bugler in the chat. Haulers, Dread FPL, FPL Craig, Podna, Kevin Rose, Connor Hunt, Blonde, Escatter Zam, FPL Teacher, Donny FPL, Tim Gorsuch, Tavindra Raj, Lindsay O, FPL DGBoy88, Akshay, Dom, Claire FPL, Tursix, Catherine A, Harry Not Kane, Sebastian Koo, Neil Inshallah Mo. It's cut off there, so that's as far as we're going with that one, Neil. Benjamin Lockwood, FPL Rubber Ducky, Nick Khan, Big Mike, General Zod, FPL Planner, Jamie Baker, Brett M, Mark Bond, FPL Eric, Grady, Parag, GV Subramanian, Jaskran Singh, and then Patreons, Elron, Lucian, FPL California, Thingamabob, Rom Frosk. That's Hogan. Rom Frosk is Hogan with the XG maps. Give him a shout in Discord. Tell him thanks for these. He's coming up with them every week, so really a big shout out to him. Mike Bork, Dr. Green Thumb, FPL Sexy, my brother down under, and Michael Rodriguez. I think we misspelled your name there, and we're going to blame Nima for that one. Thank you all very much. Love you all. Good luck in game week 26. Any parting words, Craig?
Hit Gabe. There's my parting words.
There you go. You know what? You guys convinced me. I think I'm gonna do it. Let's go. I want to have fun with that. So I'll let you know what the free hit team is. Maybe I'll throw it in the matchups. Matchups article should be posted late tonight, early morning for you guys. You should be waking up to it. So check that out on X. Good luck in game week 26. Thank you for joining us. And I'm not going to forget the outro music. As always, peace.